Hi there, this video is going to be about using the PJ80 for radio orienteering. Okay, well the PJ80 is probably the easiest and cheapest way of getting onto 80-metre radio orienteering if you want to own your own receiver. But also, if you went along to an orienteering event to try out and wanting to borrow a receiver, you're probably going to be offered one of these. So it's worth getting to know how to use it. So if you wanted to own one of these, you can build one from a kit. The kit was originally designed for school children to put together, so it goes without saying it's pretty easy to assemble. If you wanted to build the kit, well, just check out the link below for SDR kits. The first thing to say is this is an entry-level receiver, quite a simple design. It's not particularly sensitive, but perfectly good enough for your average UK radio orienteering event. Now, on such events, the event area will be something like this. That will fit on a 1 to 10,000 scale map on an A4 sheet. Now, if you're located somewhere near the bottom and the farthest transmitter is somewhere at the top, that's going to be roughly 3 kilometres maximum. So you can see that the majority of transmitters are not going to be anything like that, a lot less than 3 kilometres. So you don't really need a sensitive receiver. Now, I've got to say that the one I've got here is rather an old model that I've had quite a long time. The new version that you can get in a kit has been renamed the R3500 or something like that, and is improved in quite a few ways. So let's have a look at the controls on it. On this side of the receiver we've got two rotary control knobs. The top one is for tuning. It's got a dial, but unfortunately it's not really calibrated, so you're going to just have to tune for best reception. Of course, if you own one, you can mark the commonly used frequencies on there. Underneath that we have a gain control, which is a volume control, but also it reduces or increases the sensitivity of the radio. So that's quite important, because as you get near a transmitter and when you're very close, you need to back off the gain, otherwise the receiver can be severely overloaded and you won't really be able to get a good bearing when it's overloaded. So on the other side we've got a 3.5mm socket in which obviously you can insert your headphones or earphones, and it also switches on the receiver. That's quite a good idea, rather than having a separate on-off switch, because in that case it's all too easy to knock the switch and drain your battery. Also on this side of the case we have a little red button here, which I'm going to call the sense button. When you press it, it introduces what's called the sense circuitry, and this antenna here, a retractable antenna, is connected to that sense circuitry. Now I'll talk about this a bit later on. For now we just retract it. So how do we take bearings with this? So the PJ80 has a ferrite rod running through the casing here with a coil wound on it. That's the main antenna. Now if we rotate this receiver through 360 degrees, and listening to a transmitter, it will vary quite considerably. So let's assume that the transmitter is in the location of where you're viewing this video, in front of me. When I rotate the receiver so it's broadside to the transmitter, then the signal will be at maximum, so there and there. If I rotate the receiver so the antenna is in line with the transmitter, this signal is at its minimum, or null as we call it. Now if you look at the diagram, the response of the receiver, it's something like this. So with the receiver broadside to the transmitter, we get maximum gain in both directions. If we rotate the receiver through 90 degrees so the ferrite rod is in line with the transmitter, then we get a very deep null. Now it's this null that we use for determining the bearing, because it is very sharp, whereas the maximum signal is very broad. There's no pronounced peak, so it'd be very difficult to orientate the receiver and to try and determine the maximum signal. But the minimum signal, or the null, is very much easier to pick out. So that's what we use. Now you may notice that there's a problem here in that the response diagram is symmetrical. So we get a maximum signal that position and that position, and a minimum signal in that position and that position. So if we obtain a bearing by using the null, we don't actually know whether the transmitter is in front of us or behind us. We have an ambiguity. Now, to resolve this ambiguity, that's when we pull into operation the sense circuitry activated by pressing this red button. So when we press this red button with the antenna extended, it will slightly distort the response diagram. So instead of it being completely symmetrical like this, it will be something like this. So in one direction the maximum signal will be larger than in the other direction. However, if we look at the null, there's nothing there that's changed which will allow us to determining the direction of the transmitter from one direction or the other. So we use the maximum signal for sense reading. So what this means is you need at least 3 steps in order to get an unambiguous, accurate bearing on your transmitters. So let's run through those. First of all, we need to obtain the null bearing. So we do that. We don't at this stage need to be particularly accurate about it. So there it is. So we've got this ambiguity. We don't know whether it's in front of us or behind us. So we need to then press and hold down the sense button, and with the sense antenna extended, rotate the receiver so it's now broadside on the line that we previously determined as the null bearing. Once we've got that, we've now got this in the position for the maximum bearing reading, but quickly rotate the receiver from one side to the other. Doing it quickly means that you will be able to determine more easily the difference between the two directions, and one will obviously be slightly stronger. Once you've got that, so in this case let's say the strongest signal was in front of us, there's always a mark on the receiver which identifies the direction of the transmitter when this is rotated for the strongest signal. So in this case it's in front of us. So once we know that, we can then return to our null bearing and this time take the bearing a little bit more seriously and with a bit more accuracy. Once we've done that, we can think about using a compass to get a compass bearing on that null bearing line that we just determined, and we can use that then for plotting the bearing on our map. If this method of taking bearings all looks a bit complicated, well, with practice it can be done very quickly. So null, sense, null, and then bearing. You'll find in many cases you will not need to take a sense bearing at all. That's because the transmitter direction will be obvious. For example, if you're located on the edge of a map, maybe down here at the bottom at the start of an event, then it's pretty obvious that all your transmitters are going to be into the map and northward. So there's no real need to take a sense bearing. Also, more often than not, you don't even need to stop to take a compass bearing. After you've taken a few accurate bearings and cross bearings and got a sort of approximate locations of all the transmitters, well, the best tip is to decide which transmitter to go for and then get there as soon as possible without really taking any more accurate bearings. You might find it very useful to track the null bearing as you progress, even when you are running. You do this by just monitoring the position of the null, swinging the receiver on either side of the null bearing. This will confirm that you're heading in the right direction. But also, if you detect a significant swing to one side in the position of the null, then that's often a signal that the transmitter is very close, and if you don't change your route direction, you're about to pass it. Okay, so that's the basics of using the PJ80. Let's now move outdoors to try some real direction finding.
For this demonstration I'm using a map with a larger scale than normal, so covering a smaller area. Let's add an exclusion circle. This is the declared minimum distance of the transmitters from the start, typically 400 meters in local events, but 750 meters in international events. Today there are only 2 transmitters active. In a real event at least 5 transmitters are used. The start is at the top of the map, just south of the pond. I have already taken and plotted 2 bearings. Transmitter 1 is due south and transmitter 2 at 230 degrees. I've decided to try and find transmitter 1 first and use the path which runs due south, more or less on the line of the bearing. I plan to stop to take more bearings just outside the exclusion circle. Let's pick it up from there.
Then it was. Okay, we've got a gate coming up, so we must be here. I'll stop there. Number 1's just about to come up. Hopefully, let's swap and see if we got any sound on the big speaker. Now hopefully you can hear that. That's loud. That's quietest. So put the antenna up and you should be able to hear the difference. So it's definitely in that direction. We're heading in the right direction. I don't think it's worth us taking another bearing because it's just saying it's south. So our first bearing was south, so okay, we might wait for number 2 and get a cross bearing on number 2. Number 2 should come up about 10 seconds time. There's number 2. Oh, gone off the air. Oh. There it is. Let's get a sense on it. Much louder in that direction. So let's get a bearing. Right. Okay, somewhere over there. Take a compass bearing. Oh dear, 230. That doesn't sound too good, because that's the same as we had at the start. So something's gone wrong there, but never mind. Let's draw that on our map. So we are now about here, and we do 230. Go there. Okay, so we've got a problem. We haven't got a cross bearing. So first one or the second one was wrong. Never mind. That's what we find in the game. Anyway, let's carry on in the direction of number 1 and see what happens. Okay, looks like I'm going to drop down into a bit of a valley with a stream or something there. Okay, let's go. Looks like I'm coming up to a major path junction, so we'll try and get another bearing on 2 to see where which of my 2 bearings is right and which one is wrong. Oh, number 1's come up again, the one we're going for. Oh, it's now shot off to the left of me. There's the bear, there's the null. Definitely to the left of me. Okay, let's get that bearing. Okay, so in that direction. Oh, 120. 120 on here. Where am I? Somewhere here. 120. 120. So we're somewhere here. 120. So we're over here somewhere. Let's put an arrow on it. Number 1. Let's see if number 2 is still on the air. I really need to pinpoint where that one is. Yep, number 2 is on the air. Okay. Definitely that direction. Right, was over there. Not very good fix on this one, but by that little sapling tree. So let's get a bearing on that. What we got? 240. Hum. Okay, 240. Okay, where's our map? We are somewhere here. Align the map. And 240 is something like that. Okay. So it looks like number 2 is in this sort of area here. Number 2. Okay, let's crack on and see if we can track down number 1. Right. Number 2's on the air. Number 2. Okay, we're coming up to a major path junction now. I think I'll stop here so that we can get some idea of the next decision to make, which way to go. So I can see the road ahead of me, which is here. We're here. Number 2's still on the air. Ah, number 1's on the air. Sense. Okay, it's this direction, which is what I expected. So let's see if we can the null is definitely in this path direction, but it's now slightly off to the left, so looks like I might have gone a bit too much far. Definitely now swinging round to the left, that null. Okay, number 2. I shan't bother with that this time. Let's concentrate on getting number 1. Okay. So, what do I do here? Well, it was off to my left a bit back there, so let's just wander down here a bit. Okay, I seem to have lost my bearings, so I don't know where I think I'm down this path here, going northwards in the direction of the start. So, how we got? Number 1 should be coming on shortly. Oh, that's loud. Must be getting somewhere near. It's slightly off to the right now. Swing around on the null. Let's put that. Really loud, and I think I can see the flag. So hopefully you can see the flag there. And it's making all sorts of weird noises now. If I turn down the gain, can see the how I got the null there. Anyway, we found number one. The flag was quite visible from the path, which is not usually the case, but anyway, this is for training, so fair enough. Okay, so this is the number one station. Normally you would not expect to see the transmitter. That's probably hidden to for security reasons, so nobody nicks it. But anyway, let's see if we can go and find number two. Back to the path that we came in. You can see here the radio is making funny noises on number one because it's so close, and that's a good indication that you are close. Of course, you only get that experience after finding one or two transmitters successfully, but it doesn't take very long. Okay, let's put the volume back up. Can't hear number one, two. There it is. Okay, so I'm travelling along this path in this direction. Let's orientate and we're about here, I should think. And the transmitter should be to my left. Number one's on at the moment. Number two on. You can see the null is swinging round to my left, which is what I would expect. We should be coming up to a major junction soon. Oh, it's really swinging round. So, should I head off into the woods? Lots of brambles here. I think I will. Let's go up here. Oh damn, it's gone off the air. So that's not a good idea. So, just to recap, we're at this junction here. We're just about here. And it's sweeping off to my left. Well, according to these, we'll ignore our first bearing, which looks like it was an error. So, if we take where the cross bearings is, or are, for my two other bearings, it's much further south. So I'm here, so really I should go to this path, not bother to crash through the forest, because I might be crashing a long way. So what I'm going to do is go up to this path and go a bit further south, a bit nearer the area where I think number two is located. Oh, number two's come on again. Quite loud. Oh, it's still swinging. It is really swung round. That's a bit odd. I thought I'd have to go a bit further south, but it's more or less at right angles to this path now. Let's check the sense. Definitely that way. Let's go. So follow the bearing, just swing slightly left and right to keep the null bearing in sort of view. Ah, it's going off the air. Okay, no matter. What I should do now is run the bearing. So that was the last bearing I had. Let's get my compass out and take a bearing on that, like that. And then what I'm going to do is, holding the compass rather than the radio, is follow my compass bearing as far as I can. Obviously there are times when things get in the way, but okay, we're following the bearing, and by crikey, there it is, number 2, and the transmitter was off the air.
So the two transmitters are both eventually found. I'll let you know my errors were real, but I did cut out a few of the more embarrassing ones. Anyway, that's all for now. Thanks for watching.